morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me for our first activity of the day, reading. Today for reading, we're going to be reading Chapter 1, Like Your Grandparents, and answering our comprehension questions. Yesterday, we read What is DNA, and that was the introduction chapter to our new topic for reading for the month. So today we're going to dive in and begin reading our chapter book. But first I want to go over the focus question. And the focus question is, do you look like anyone in your family? Okay? Our focus question yesterday was, what color were your eyes? So I told you to think about what color were your eyes, and maybe if anybody in your family had the same color eyes. Like I said, for example, I have blue eyes and my dad also has blue eyes. So today the focus question is, do you look like anyone in your family? Which means, do you resemble maybe your mom or your dad or any of your grandparents? Or maybe you look very similar to your siblings. Maybe you look similar to your sister, or maybe you look similar to your brother. We're going to come back and revisit our focus question after we finish reading today. But before we dive into reading, I want to go over the 5 vocabulary words that we are going to be learning about and hearing a lot about in our story. One of them will look familiar to you since we saw that vocabulary word and worked with that vocabulary word yesterday in our reading, What is DNA? As I say each of the vocab words, you can repeat back after me. So we have grandparents, trait, eyes, same, and great-grandparents, okay? Eyes should be familiar to you since we had the focus question about what color is your eyes yesterday, and we talked about how our genes, how we could have similar genes based on our parents as well. So materials that we are going to need for today is you're going to need, now remember, all of the materials moving forward are going to be in the third packet that was sent home. Remember, we're going to be using this packet to carry us over to the end of the school year. So you should find the Chapter 1, Like Your Grandparents reading. For those of you that do the fill-in-the-blank questions, you would grab your fill-in-the-blank questions. And then for those of you that do the multiple choice questions, you would gather the multiple choice questions. Everybody is going to need a pencil, and everybody is going to need a correcting tool. For those of you that complete the fill-in-the-blank questions, you're going to need a scissor to cut out the answers on the back, and you're also going to need either glue or tape. So you could glue or tape your answers in the blank. I'm going to go over the materials one more time. Everybody should be gathering from their packet Chapter 1 reading, Like Your Grandparents. If you use the fill-in-the-blank questions, you would gather the fill-in-the-blank questions. If you use the multiple choice questions, you would be gathering the multiple choice questions. Everyone is going to need a pencil. Everybody is going to need a correcting tool. And then for those of you that complete the fill-in-the-blank questions, make sure that you gather a scissor and also glue or tape. If you need extra minutes gathering those materials, pause the video here, and then when you come back, we're going to get started in a whole group read of Chapter 1, Like Your Grandparents. Okay, now that everybody has those materials in front of them, I would like everybody to make sure that they have their Chapter 1, Like Your Grandparents reading in front of you, and you're going to follow along with me as we read. We'll also stop during the reading just to go over some key points that were being made. So with the title, Chapter 1, Like Your Grandparents. Josh looks at pictures. He sees a picture of his great-grandpa. It was a long time ago. His great-grandpa was 4 years old. So a great-grandparent or a great-grandpa would be that your grandparents' parents. Josh looks at a picture of him. Josh looks like his great-grandpa. They both have brown hair. Josh and his great-grandpa have brown eyes. So now, the vocabulary word same we heard about in here. So when Josh is comparing pictures of his great grandpa when he was younger to pictures of when Josh was younger, Josh noticed that him and his great grandpa both had the same color hair, which is brown, and both had the same color eyes, which are brown. Josh looks at another picture. He sees his great grandpa buy a house. His great grandpa built the house. Josh's dad likes to build things. So over here you can see that when Josh is looking at a picture, notice that his great grandpa built the house, and then Josh thinks back on how his dad likes to build. So they're similar. Josh looks at another picture. He sees a little girl and a boy. It is Grandma Barb. The little boy is her brother. Josh looks at a picture of Claire, which is his sister. Claire is Josh's sister. Claire looks like Grandma Barb. Claire looks like her grandma. They both have blue eyes. So now when Josh is looking at a picture of his sister Claire and a picture of his grandma Barb, he notices that his sister and his grandma share some same traits. They both have blue eyes. Josh looks at more pictures. Grandma Barb was a teacher. Claire wants to be a teacher. Grandma and Claire are the same in some ways. So now Josh is realizing that Claire wants to be a teacher, and so was Grandma Barb. So Claire is similar to Grandma Barb. They share some of the same traits. Grandparents and kids can have the same traits. They can have different traits too. A trait is how a person looks. Okay? So a trait is how a person looks. So maybe how the person looks in terms of their eye color, in terms of their hair color, maybe how tall they're going to be, their height. Josh looks like his great-grandpa. Claire looks like Grandma Barb. People and families can be the same, and people and families can be different. And then over here, this is what they call a family tree. So as we continue reading our chapters, we will be growing and building the family tree based on our readings. So over here, if you look at the top, we have great-grandpa, so Josh's great-grandpa, and Josh's great-grandma. Below, they had 2 children, okay, and those 2 children are Great-Uncle Bill and Grandma Barb. So Grandma Barb, so when we go back to the reading, Josh looks like great-grandpa because Josh has the same color hair that is brown as great-grandpa, and Josh has the same color eyes, which are brown as great-grandpa. Going back to the reading, his sister Claire looks like great-grandpa's daughter, Grandma Barb, because Claire has blue eyes just like Grandma Barb, and Claire wants to be a teacher just like Grandma Barb was. So now we're going to go over and answer our comprehension questions. For those of you that have the fill-in-the-blank questions, I'd like you to pause the video here, cut out these 5 pictures, and then have your glue stick ready, because I'm going to be reading these questions to you so then you can answer the blank. For those of you that have the multiple choice questions, I'd like you to get out your pencil now and begin writing your first and last name. Okay, so now that everybody has both of their questions prepped, for those of you that have the multiple choice, you're just circling your answer that best completes the question. For those of you that have a fill in the blank, all of your 5 pictures should be cut out, and then you would just be gluing your correct answer in the blank. Remember, for those of you that have the fill in the blank questions, it's a choice of two. So remember, you're presenting the choice of two to them, one for the correct answer and one for the incorrect answer. I'm going to read question number 1 on the multiple choice, then I will read question number 1 on the fill in the blanks, and we'll go back and forth until all of our questions have been read. Okay, so question number 1 on the multiple choice. What is this chapter about? Grandparents, animals, or houses? Question number 1 on the fill-in. Josh looks like his grandparents, trait, eyes, same, or great grandparents. Question number 1 on the multiple choice. Who does Josh look like? Dog, great-grandpa, or Claire? Question number 2 on the fill-in. Josh and his great-grandpa have brown grandparents, trait, eyes, same, or great-grandpa. Question number 3 on the multiple choice. What do Josh and his great-grandpa both have? Brown eyes, orange shirts, or red hair? Number 3 on the fill-in. Grandma and Claire are the blank in some ways. Grandparents, trait, eyes, same, or great-grandparents. Question number 4 on the multiple choice. What is how a person looks? A camera, a leg, or a trait? Question number 4 on the fill-in. A blank is how a person looks. Grandparents, trait, eyes, same, great-grandparents. And then question number 5 on the multiple choice. What is important to know about this chapter? Josh likes to build houses. Grandparents and kids can have the same traits. Or Claire wants to build a garage. And then number 5 on the fill-in. Blank and kids can have the same traits. Grandparents, trait, eyes, same, or great-grandparents. If you have the fill in the blanks, just make sure that all of them are answered. If you have to go back and rewind the video just to repeat a question, you can do so at this time. For those of you, and then you can just hang out for a little bit because we're going to finish the rest of the multiple choice questions. So for those of you that have the multiple choice questions, let's turn your paper over. You're just gonna flip it. Yeah, turn your paper over, and then you're going to see the additional multiple choice questions. Okay. Remember, these questions may have more than one correct answer. If you think you know both of the answers, if the question might have 2 of the correct answers, you can fill in both circles, but remember, we're just focusing on getting at least one of the answers correct. So number 8, what did Grandma Bob do for a job? Was she a teacher, a construction worker, or a nurse? And remember, you're bubbling in the circle here. Number 7, who can share similar traits? Parents, brothers, or neighbors? Number 8, what is an example of a trait? Height, hair color, eye color. How is Claire like Grandma Barb? Claire has blonde hair and blue eyes. Claire is the same age as Grandma Barb, but Claire wants to be a teacher. Number 10, what does Josh learn about people in his families? They do not like to talk to each other. They can be very similar, or they can also be very different. So make sure that, for those of you that have the multiple choice questions, make sure that all of your answers are complete. If you have to go back and revisit one of the questions, you can always rewind the video to that point. listen to the question again, and then pick up from where you left off. So now, since everybody should have all of their questions answered, I'd like you all to get out your correcting tool. And remember, we're going to correct our work. For those of you that have the multiple choice, if you get the answer correct, remember we're putting a check. If you get the answer incorrect, you're just putting an X, circling the correct answer to learn from our mistakes. For those of you that have the fill in the blanks, if you are able to, you can try to pull off the answer and replace it with the correct one. If not, you can just make a note by using any of the extra pictures from the back and just gluing the correct answer on the top. So I'm going to do the same process. Read question number 1 of the multiple choice, answer it, and then read and answer the fill in the blank questions. So question number 1 on the multiple choice. What is this chapter about? Grandparents, animals, or houses? The correct answer is grandparents. Question number 1 on the fill-in. Josh looks like his. And the correct answer is going to be great-grandpa. Number 2 on the multiple choice. Who does Josh look like? Dog, great-grandpa, or Claire? The correct answer is great-grandpa. So Josh and great-grandpa share similar traits. Okay, they have the same color hair, which is brown, and they also have the same color eyes, which are brown. Number 2 on the multiple fill in the blank. Josh and his great-grandpa have brown, and the correct fill-in is eyes. They both have brown eyes, and they both have brown hair. Number 3 on the multiple choice. What do Josh and his great-grandpa both have? Brown eyes, orange shirts, or red hair? And the correct answer is brown eyes. Number 3 on the fill-in. Grandma and Claire are the blank in some ways. And the correct answer is same. Grandma and Claire are the same in some ways because they both have blue eyes, and Claire wants to be a teacher, and Grandma Barb was a teacher. Number 4 on the fill-in. What is how a person looks? A camera, a leg, or a trait? The correct answer is a trait. Okay, so remember, a trait could be you sharing the same color eyes, the same color hair. It could be height related. It could be the skin color. We're going to be learning a lot more about that as we continue with our chapter reading. Question number 4 in the fill-in. A blank is how a person looks, and the correct answer is trait. A trait is how a person looks. Number 5 on the multiple choice. What is important to know about this chapter? Josh likes to build houses. Grandparents and kids can have the same traits. Claire wants to build a garage. And the correct one is B. Grandparents and kids can have the same traits. Number 5 on the fill-in. Blank and kids can have the same traits. And your correct fill-in is grandparents. For those of you that have the fill in the blank questions, you can just set those aside and listen as we correct the rest of the multiple choice questions, and then we're going to go back, revisit our focus question and vocab words. Okay, so for those of you that have the multiple choice additional questions, make sure that you are turning your paper over and getting ready to correct the rest. So number 6, what did Grandma Bob do for a job? Teacher, construction worker, or nurse? The correct answer is teacher. Number 7. Who can share similar traits? Parents, brothers, or neighbors? So there's 2 for this one. Parents can share similar traits, and brothers. Neighbors wouldn't qualify because neighbors are not part of your family. Number 8, what is an example of a trait? Height, hair color, or eye color? They're all correct. Height is an example of a trait, so sometimes if your father or your mother are tall, and you could also have the possibility of being tall. Hair color, So some of you might share the same hair color as your mother or your father. And eye color. Some of you might have the same eye color as your mom or your dad. And same thing with your siblings. You and your siblings could share the same eye color or the same hair color. Number 9. How is Claire like Grandma Barb? Claire has blonde hair and blue eyes. Claire is the same age as Grandma Barb. Claire wants to be a teacher. So C is correct. Claire wants to be a teacher, and Grandma Barb was a teacher. And then also A is correct. In our part of the story, we only heard that Claire and Grandma Barb have blue eyes. But if we were to read another version of the story, the longer version of the story, it talks about how Claire and Grandma Barb both have blonde hair. So if you didn't have A, that's perfectly fine as long as that you had C. That's what we read about in the story. And then number 10, what does Josh learn about people in families? They do not like to talk to each other. They can be very similar. They can also be very different. So the one I want to focus on is B. They can be very similar. And then also if you had C, that's also correct. They can also be very different. Okay. So now that all of our questions are answered, I want to go back and revisit the focus question in our vocab words. So our focus question was, do you look like anyone in your family? So I want you to think about that. After reading our chapter 1, Like Your Grandparents, we learned how our character, Josh, looks like his great-grandpa. And then we learned how his sister Claire looks like his Grandma Barb. Maybe you share similar traits with anyone in your family. Maybe you look similar to your grandma. Maybe you look similar to your grandpa or your mom or your dad. And I want you to think about that and how you may look similar. And then I just want to go over the 5 vocab words and then recap the story before we transition into math. So as I say each of the vocab words, I'd like you to repeat back after me. We're also going to be hearing a lot of these vocab words as we continue our reading unit. Grandparents, trait, eyes, same, and great-grandparents. So today in our reading, chapter 1, Like Your Grandparents, we learned that you might share similar traits with people in your family, such as maybe your grandparents or your great-grandparents. Some of you might share the same color eyes as someone in your family. Some of you, in relation to traits, might share the same hair color as someone in your family, or maybe you're the same height as someone in your family. So basically, we can be the same as people in our family, or we can be different with people in our family. So we're going to be learning more. We're going to be learning more about Josh and his family. We learned so far that Josh looks like his great-grandpa, in which they have the same color eyes and the same color hair, which is brown. We also learned that Josh's sister, Claire, looks similar to his grandma, Barb, in which they share the same color hair, which is blonde, and the same color eyes, which are blue. Claire also wants to be a teacher, in which Grandma Bob was a teacher. So Josh knows that in families can share the same traits, and families can also share different traits. So we're going to be learning more about traits and how you may or may not look like maybe your mom or your dad or your grandparents or your great-grandparents. So we will be reading chapter 2 later on this week. So after reading, just make sure that you have your parents or an adult or older sibling just send me a picture of your comprehension questions so I can view them, and then we will get ready and head into math. So I will see you all back in math.